Welcome to Anxious While Black, a podcast that explores the intersection of wellness, being Black in America, LGBTQ plus experiences, and just the ghetto-ness of young adulthood. Hi, I'm Emperor.
And I'm Tevin, and welcome to our 9th episode. Today we have a very special guest. Say hello to author Douglas Bell.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Where are you tuning in from?
I am tuning in from Houston, Texas, where
come on, Houston.
Yeah, born and raised here in Houston. I'm probably one of the few people you ever meet actually born and raised in Houston. Most people you meet are from somewhere else.
That is true. A lot of people that I talk to are like, oh, I came from Atlanta or New York City or DC.
Or New Orleans.
Yeah, especially New Orleans, absolutely.
Yes.
So it's good to see someone who was born and raised.
So when you meet someone, they're shocked too. They go, oh, you're from Houston? Like born and raised in Houston? Like, yeah. Oh, wow. So yeah, it kind of catches people by surprise.
Similar to New York.
Yeah, I would have to believe that too.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I would have to.
Yeah, I didn't think about that before.
Because you're from here.
Born and raised in New York, baby. That's right.
I was born here, but grew up in Delaware.
Okay.
So normally what we do to get to know the guest better, we do an icebreaker question. So Tevin, what's the icebreaker for today?
If you could go back and change one thing in your life, what would it be and why?
Let's see. That's a deep question. What one at this late? I'm in my mid 50s now. I'm just a few years shy of 60.
Wow. You look great.
Well, thank you. I think I just have a general regret for worrying too much about what people thought, and I really let that control what I did and did not do. I was always so concerned with not disappointing someone. That was huge to me. I did not want to disappoint my parents, and I did not want to disappoint anybody else who I thought it mattered to. But that also kept me from doing a lot of things. It also kept me from being authentic. And I think just because you're being honest or authentic doesn't mean you have to disappoint someone. And when I look back at my 20s and my 30s, my 40s, I think my 40s, I started to kind of understand that. But the sad thing about that is now that I'm pretty successful and settled, it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe this is wrong, but maybe I can afford to be a little bit more authentic. And I think that's the part I don't like. I really wish that I had found the courage to just simply do the things that I felt like I needed to do for myself or wanted to do for myself.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can compete with that. That's really, really deep. I think a lot of people honestly actually probably share that same, sentiment, right? Just because, there are times where people wish they could have been more authentic, and then you look past like, that could have been a moment, or why didn't you do that, right? But the blessing is at least you were able to figure that out. There are people who are 60, 70, 80 years old who are still living life for other people and not being their authentic self. So I think you're winning right now.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think to your point, you all opened by saying that you were really focused on young adulthood. And I think that if I had to give anything back to a younger person, would be exactly that the universe will provide. God will provide.
Right. You
can find the courage to be who you're supposed to be. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's not, there's going to be difficulties along the way. But I think my message here to a young person is you only got one chance to do these things.
Love that. Yeah. What about you, Tevin?
I think mine is kind of similar. I was saying I probably would go back to my high school self. And, I used to stay underneath the radar so that I wouldn't get bothered for being gay. So I would go back to my high school self and tell myself, don't hide, be your own true self. Just embrace it, because that ultimately now me in my lower 30s, I suffer with social anxiety, or sometimes I was actually speaking with my therapist about this on Friday, where sometimes it's hard for me to open up, or I'm like a little bit more reserved because I spent so much of my teenage years just trying to stay underneath the radar and not really be bothered or clocked.
And that's totally understandable. It really is. It is totally understandable.
Understandable.
When you tap into the spiritual portion of your lives, then I think then you can find that courage, that strength that then can carry you to the places you want to be. And I think that journey can be supported and even made easier by having a strong spiritual practice as you understand who I am and who I want to be in all of this.
True.
That's deep.
Yeah. How about you, Emperor?
I have a million things I could choose from. But staying kind of on topic, honestly, one thing that I wish you said could have changed or did soon. I guess so. One thing I wish I would have did sooner probably would have just been like have a stronger like spiritual connection to God. I mean, I went through tough times, and I guess that's, sometimes that's what it happens. I told before I was homeless, and, I prayed and I was inconsistent. And then when my prayers became more consistent, I just kind of let go and let God. I saw my life change tremendously. But that happened through meeting the right people and just, really believing. But I wish that was engraved in me as a child or, at 9, 10 years old, or not necessarily had to go to church, but just my, family saying like, God is real and you need to pray and just believe in this and that and the third. It was mentioned, but I don't feel like it was like as deeply rooted as it is now with me in my own personal life. So I just wish that I was able to like do that earlier. But I am blessed and I'm happy that I did find God, and I'm absolutely happy, and he has changed my life for the better. But I just wish it happened a lot sooner because it helped me build my confidence along the way. Yeah.
So this wouldn't be Anxious While Black if we didn't talk about what makes us anxious. So what's making everyone anxious for this week?
Well, I'm in Houston, Texas, and I don't have any power. They say after this hurricane, this tornado, so the last thing said that we should have power. I think over 1 million people were without power.
Wow.
I think they're down to 300,000 people are still without power. They're thinking that most people should have power by Wednesday or Thursday of next week.
It's Saturday for reference.
Well, no, Wednesday, Thursday of this week. No, Wednesday, Thursday of this week. I'm sorry, Wednesday, Thursday of this week. So we finally couldn't take it. And so we're at my mother's house, which is why I'm able to do the podcast. And then also too, my book, Love Cake, is actually on Amazon now, and some of the reviews are starting to come in. So that's got me anxious too.
Exciting but anxious.
Yes. I don't know if y'all guys watch this, but I love Law and Order SVU, right? That's one of my favorite shows. I watch it when I'm just de-stressing. And she keeps talking about this character, Maddie, like for the whole entire season. Like it has nothing, like there was a segment where she's trying to find this young lady, end up finding her, great, it was to be over. Every other episode she mentions this Maddie. She has a flashback. She even popped up in the latest episode recently. I'm like, why is she still there? I'm just really, really confused about what it is. And it's making me very, very anxious because why is Maddie Flynn still on the show? I just don't understand it. It's bothering me right now. Mariska, please, let me know. What about you, Tevin?
I actually saw an article earlier this week talking about food, how much food costs now compared to how much it costs a year ago or something like that. No, this was like something randomly I saw on Facebook.
Okay.
They went to Walmart and got a bunch of food this year and compared it to how much it was last year. Last year they got a lot of food, 200 and something items for like $400.
Okay.
And this year they got the 200 something items for like $800 and something dollars.
Absolutely not.
So the price of food and groceries and everything else that we need is what's making me anxious.
Remember, I ranted about that last time.
Yeah.
It's expensive. It's so expensive.
So, you ready to get into the topic of the day?
Yes, we are.
Today, we're talking about persevering and thriving through times of adversity. So, Douglas, tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, let's see. It's 2 books, and it's titled The Cake Series. The first novel is Cakewalk. The second novel is Love Cake. But I want to start with Love Cake. So Love Cake is about a set here in Houston, Texas. And Houston is somewhat conservative, but Texas, when you get into the rural areas, that's conservative. That gets kind of rough, okay? But set here in Texas, and our protagonist, Brian Hicks, is a ex VP of an oil and gas, senior VP of an oil and gas company, and he has quit his job to help his girlfriend, Nadia Brooks, on a bakery here in Houston, Texas. And this bakery, Nadia, she is trans, and this would be basically the first and only run trans bakery in the city of Houston. So this is a fictional story, but basically it is telling their story about their relationship and how they're running this bakery, as well as living their lives in Houston, Texas as a cis trans couple. Now, Brian, he is divorced. He has 2 kids. One child is in college. The other child is at home with him. And that child is queer and wants to be a drag queen. He basically wants to be the next RuPaul in a lot of ways. But so they have all of this going on in their lives. And Love Cake, in a lot of ways, is really Lance, the son, Brian, and Nadia, them against the world. Where Cakewalk, in a lot of ways, was Brian against himself. In Cakewalk, Brian really struggled with his self-acceptance and loving Nadia. He didn't understand, or rather he was questioning everything from his masculinity to his sexuality. He was questioning all kinds of things as to why he was in love with Nadia, why he was dating Nadia. But he also knew the consequences of dating Nadia, which gets back to our point earlier about his hesitation for openly dating Nadia. But she deserved more. She deserved to be loved in the way that she wanted to be loved. And that, in a lot of ways, that's what Cakewalk is about, is his journey to self-acceptance, so that he could love her and also to love his son. Because in Cakewalk, his son came out as queer and came out as wanting to be a drag queen. And Brian, in his hypocrisy, punished his son for that. And so this is very much his journey to figuring out how he could love, how he needed to love himself in order to love those around him.
So I have a question for you. What inspired you to write your original book, Cakewalk, and what inspired you to create a sequel?
So it's interesting. The writing in general really started as my retirement plan. I have started looking at what am I going to do in retirement. In my mind, I'm fortunate that I'm going to be able to retire here in probably the next 4 years or so. Retire it doesn't mean you're just going to sit around and do nothing, but retire. So with that being said, I looked into going into fashion. I looked into maybe looking into art. And at the same time, I've been writing. And I'm always writing. I serve on a lot of boards. And so with that, I'm always writing donors. I'm always writing people. I am married. And I am always writing my wife. I've probably written my wife maybe 900 letters in the nearly 20 years that we've been together. So I've always been writing. I started, well, actually, me and her had gone and started doing some therapy. And doing therapy, these stories about my life before I met her started coming out. And so this was my opportunity during this time during therapy to tell her that there was a point in my life, long before we started using the word trans, that I had been dating trans women. But this was back in the 80s.
Wow.
This was back in the 90s. I mean, long before we have what we have today. What we have today is more nuanced, more more developed. If you go back to the 80s and the 90s, all of these conversations, with sexuality and gender identity, they were all just crammed together, in just one one conversation. They were nowhere near as nuanced as they are today. So it's interesting, as kind of a therapeutic exercise, I started writing about some of my experiences. And that turned into maybe about 15,000 words. Now you have to realize most literary fiction novels sit between 80 and 120,000 words. I like a good challenge. So that's what I did. And to your point, the universe started providing. It started providing people who were PhDs in creative writing. It started providing people who were already authors. And next thing you know, I had 60, 70, 80, 90,000 words and had a story. I couldn't believe I had written this whole novel. And so I added Lance. Nadia is kind of an accumulation of a number of different women that I know. And I still have a number of trans women and a few trans men in my life today. And so in a lot of ways, Cakewalk may have started out as a therapeutic exercise, but it ended up really being an opportunity to reveal a trans person's humanity, but from the lens of a cis person. So often you see that trans people are being dehumanized in so many ways. And so as I continued to write this, I saw this was an opportunity to really put that trans person, and specifically a trans woman, in to be seen from a perspective that no one ever considered. Meaning, why does she always have to tell her story? Can her story be told from another perspective? And also, too, be less of a barrier to someone listening, because that's the beauty of allyship. I think it's as much as I feel this is true, I don't like this. As much as Black people talk about what we're anxious about, no one really seems to listen till white folks start talking about it. As much as a woman talks about what she's anxious about, no one seems to listen till a man starts talking about it. And you can go, so here's my point. Maybe telling this from a cis perspective lowers the barriers to seeing her humanity, because it's being told from a place of allyship. It's being told from a place of love. It's not being told from a place of fetishizing. It's not being told from a place of being very casual or provocative. It's really a story about two people.
Ooh. So what made you decide to put all of this into one story, or one or two stories?
Well, let's see. Well, as it's interesting you said that a person who read Cakewalk emailed me and said, and this was a white person, and she was very clear that she was white. And she says, well, I just hate that you have to write this from a Black. She kind of, well, why is the code switching necessary? And I was kind of like, well, I was really kind of thrown by the question at first, but I said, but it's very unfair to Black people in general, to Black people as a community, that when we walk in spaces, to not recognize when we feel Black. How can I just write that out? I just can't. You just can't. Yeah. And for the Black people who pick these books up, they have to be saying to themselves, okay, now who is this guy again? and the protagonist is Black, right? So the Black part has to stay. You can't get around the Black part. And then you've got a matter of the love interest being white. So you've got this tension there and you know what, I'm gonna back up. I wanted to throw everything at the protagonist that I could think of. Everything from race to his mama to his job. You got to realize he is a senior vice president at a global oil and gas company. This guy probably is one of the highest ranking black individuals within the oil and gas industry. This guy is easily making $500,000 a year. This guy has put up whatever he's had to put up with to get to wherever he's getting. He is having a good time. He is making his money. He may be divorced. He's paying his child support, but he's got his 2 kids. He's having a great. So for him realizing that corporations can only take so much diversity at one time, well, you had to throw all this at this guy. So basically, let's just back up and say, I threw everything in the kitchen sink at the protagonist. Plus, she is 6'4". Yeah, she's 6'4", and so you can't help but see these two. So I am throwing everything at this guy with the idea that he must really love her.
What do you hope readers take away from Love Cake?
I am really hoping in both Love Cake and Cakewalk, it comes back to what we talked about earlier about the spiritual journey. I want readers to see. So let's back up here. So I actually am a Buddhist. I'm a practicing Buddhist, have been probably for the past 30 years. Actually helped start the Houston Zen Center. And so when I was going through an extremely tough time in my life, extremely tough, and here I'm going to go back to the second thing that I want people to take away is that my mama swoops in. My mama, she puts on a red cape with the instead of an S but an M, and she flies in. I tell you, and she saves me. She saves me. But there also comes a point too where I realized I had to become my own therapist and I had to become my own psychologist. And one day I was sitting inside Barnes and Nobles. I am broke. I am broke financially. I am broke emotionally. I am broke mentally, spiritually. I am broke at this point in my life in all ways. And I came across this book by the Dalai Lama. It was about happiness. And I was just kind of like, well, what is happiness? Because I haven't seen happiness in years. I don't have a clue what that is. And so I started meditating. And through the meditating, sitting with it, sitting with the pain, sitting with who I was, sitting with what was going on in my life, this courage, this strength started developing inside me, where I was then able, not so much tethered to my mother as much. But you got to realize I'm a young man at this time. I'm figuring things out. Well, anyway, what I want people to get from these novels is the power of the spiritual portion of your lives, because it is the spiritual journey for Brian is where he actually has this awakening that not only who he is, but he has the courage to handle who he is. He did not do that he did not do that alone. He did not do that by himself. He did that through the meditation. And to your point, Emperor, when you made the statement about prayer, he did that, you could almost say, through prayer. He did that leaning on that spiritual journey and what it had to offer. So what I want people to see when you're reading these novels, pick up on the spiritual aspects of how he's maturing and growing. But then also in Love Cake, realize how he's transferring that to Nadia. Nadia is running this business that's in a lot of ways, without giving the story away, it's hurting during the pandemic, like all businesses. But he is teaching her. He's showing her how meditation and how sitting with this and how seeing that what comes is always in our best interest. He despite the mistake he actually makes in Love Cake that really sends them in a whole new direction, because he's not perfect, but he also understands the power of the spiritual journey. He understands the power of meditation. So that is one thing. But then the second thing, I think the power of motherhood. In these novels, you will see the connection. And motherhood doesn't necessarily mean biological. Motherhood also means chosen family. Right. For those individuals, who have had to lean on the motherhood of someone in the chosen family, that was instrumental. And that's also what you see in these novels is where the bonds of chosen family motherhood can be equally and are many times equally as strong as the biological bond of motherhood. And that was the other thing I really wanted to promote because Nadia very much was ready for motherhood and she stepped into that role. In my opinion, she stepped into that role beautifully. But that ideal of motherhood then extends in other places throughout these novels, even for Brian as well. So those are the two things that I would like to see really come from this. Is if you have a spiritual practice, strengthen it. If you don't have a spiritual practice, go meditate, go pray, and then last, if you got a good relationship with your mama, go hug your mama. If you have someone who is a mother figure in your life, go hug that person. And that's not taking anything from the dads. We us dads we have our role and our place, but there is a strength in mothers that I think sometimes gets ignored. Who mothers are, the cornerstone to families, the cornerstone to churches, the cornerstone to a lot of things. And I think mothers don't get enough credit for how much they put themselves second to everyone else around them. So those are the two of the major things I would like to see from love, other than just the fun and the love between these two people and some good sex.
Ooh. That.
Or was I not supposed to say that?
You did. This is an open dialogue show. You can say what you have to say. I agree with you. I do believe that, mothers as a whole do not get their due diligence or just the credit just for holding down things. A lot of time people don't really see that until they get older. They go, oh, wow, how did my mom do it? Or how did my mother figure do it? Or when they actually become parents, they're like, oh my gosh, this what you did? And it was 4 of us, only have one, and you never complained that one day. You working at 3 jobs, right? So I have a question for you. I know you said that you want to retire and just keep on writing, which I hope you continue to do. Is there going to be a trilogy to the 2 books you already have?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Actually, I've started writing the next book. So the next book will be a trilogy, and this will be focused on bail reform and prison reform. So once again, it's going to be written from the place of it is being written from the place of the privilege, because in all relationships, you've got there's privilege. There is privilege between gay and straight. In society, there's privilege. Walking into spaces, there's privilege. There's privilege between men and women. There's privilege between black and white. There's privilege between, being an American and being in another part of the world. There's privilege, but also too with privilege, that's also can be the most place for transformation. Because the privileged person does not have to do anything. That's the beauty of being privileged. Your life goes on with all the stuff going around you. Your life just keeps on moving because you're privileged in some way. So with that being said, my protagonist in this particular novel, his name is Asher. Asher is actually a medical resident at a hospital here in Houston. And I did not know this. I learned this the other day when I started, which is how I got to this. But medical residents work about 80 hours a week, 73 hours a week, and only make like $40,000 a year, 45.
It's wild.
Yeah. And I read about this. I saw this in a story where a young lady committed suicide because she was done. She was a medical resident. Yeah, and she was just done. And so my person is selling drugs to make ends meet. But from his privileged background, this now puts him in the Harris County jail system. Hence where the transformation now starts.
It's not like a TV show.
You gotta let us know when that comes out.
And so
definitely tune in to watch that.
but at the same time, he has a brother who is in prison who will show up in the second novel. So more stereotypes to come, and also to the relationship between these two men. So I don't see another story, but I will have to say I am curious though about Lance in Love Cake and Cakewalk. I am curious a little bit what his life could be like if he did actually make it onto RuPaul. If he actually made it onto the TV show RuPaul, and Nadia and Brian go to New York City or go to wherever RuPaul is, and it just, and I don't know, kind of like they're in New York City and stuff's happening. But they're there in New York City as a cis trans couple supporting Lance as he is on a RuPaul show. Maybe we get to meet RuPaul, maybe some other drag performers. But to your question, there is a little bit of a curiosity, kind of like, well, could you play with that? What could they get into, or rather, where is the transformation? Where does the transformation come? Is there further transformation with Brian and Nadia? Is there further transformation? Is there some transformation with Lance, or is there another character who they run into that transforms? I really want people to see a tangible, because I want people to see what's possible. I think most of us already see what's not possible. We already see somebody on TV fussing and complaining who just can't show enough empathy.
Where can people buy Love Cake and Cakewalk?
So Love Cake and Cakewalk now is on my website, www.douglasbellbooks.com, as well as Amazon. Also, too, you're welcome to follow me and subscribe on. I have a YouTube channel where I'm actually interviewing what I like to call artists who are working at the intersection of art, social justice, and the human spirit. And so you'll see where I just last week I was able to interview a trans woman who is a filmmaker living in Spain. Just really blown away by what she's been able to accomplish. And, we know of so many stories where the LGBTQ plus community is hitting all these barriers. Black folks are hitting all these barriers. Immigrants are hitting all these barriers. All of us are hitting all these barriers. Well, the beauty, I think, in these stories that you see on the YouTube channel are actually people who are finding ways around those barriers that you didn't even know even were out there and existing. So that's what I'm loving about it on the YouTube, that I'm finding these people, they're finding me. We're talking about why all of this matters, just like you all are doing today. Y'all are talking about why all this matters. I am so impressed with you all, especially as young people, stepping into these conversations and wanting to be a conduit and a vehicle for people like myself who've been out there, who've seen it, to tell you these stories, because I think in a lot of ways it's not enough of us old folks. Not that 58 is old, but 58, I've seen some things. I've seen some things, done some things, and you all being that vehicle to get some of these conversations out from older people, from people who've done things, I think is what we should be doing. And so I really want to applaud you all for creating this format. I really do, and for giving me this format as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, no, y'all have been a lot of fun. This has been great. I can't tell y'all thank you enough for doing this.
You know what that sound means?
You know I do.
It's time for Emperor's Rant.
Yes, I'm back to ranting. I know I wasn't here last episode, but I promise you it was worth the wait.
Well, you were here. You just weren't ranting.
You know what? There you go. I was here. That part.
All right. So you know how this goes.
Yep.
You got 2 minutes
I swear I need more time.
to get stuff off your chest, and that time starts now.
All right, guys. Today we're talking about the stigmatization of therapy. I know you probably grew up with parents and grandparents and friends and foes who sat there and said that therapy is for the weak. It's not something that you should go to. It shows that you can't handle life by itself. Well, guess what? We can't handle life by ourselves. That's why there are 8 billion people on this earth. Also, therapy isn't for weak. It's actually people who are strong, who can admit that they need help or that they're going through tough situations or that there are angst and things that they're going through that they can't solve on their by themselves. Sorry about that. Yes, therapy is very, very important because your friend is not your therapist. Your partner is not your therapist. You cannot drop and load on people and then walk away because then they take that on with them. Find people, especially therapists, who you could talk to and just be your authentic self. They're there not to judge you. They're not going to sit there and like question why and how. They're going to give you tools to help support you and help you get over certain things. There are things that happen in your life that are pretty personal that are stopping you from progressing and being your most authentic or great self. Listen, a therapist would definitely be that person who would sit there and help you. I'm not going to lie to you either. You might not find a therapist right away. You might have to go to 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 of them. But I promise you, there are people out there who are hoping that you reach out to them so they can help you and guide you. I've been given tools and tricks from meditating to just centering myself to surrounding myself with different people that definitely helped me grow and be great. So I'm encouraging you guys to not, just break our generational cycles and not listen to people for you to be great. A lot of your favorite people, athletes and artists, they all go to therapy, whether it's couple therapy or therapy for themselves, just to be a great person. So as I'm saying again, go to therapy and it's great for you, your body. That's it. No, all honesty, y'all, therapy is very, very important, and do not let what you've heard in the past stop you from propelling in your future.
Are you ready for Am I the A-hole moment?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so this week, am I the a-hole for being upset that my parents only ever visit me if I pay? I am a 35-year-old male living on the West Coast. My parents are retired, divorced, and live on the East Coast independently. My parents and I are financially well off, so money is not an issue for any of us. That said, my parents recently having asserted that they'd only ever visit me if I paid their airfare. They'd pretty much be willing to never see me again over $200. I have no issue actually footing the bill, but it feels like they are parents for hire. My sister is a 37-year-old female, is not financially literate and terrible with money. She recently had a kid, and my parents have no issue heavily financing or supporting her. This dichotomy between my sister and I also just makes me a bit more bummed. I am not sure if I am making something out of nothing. They're willing to literally never see me again if I don't foot the bill for them to fly out. Am I the a-hole for taking this to heart?
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
I don't think he's an a-hole. I think his family, like I said in my rant, they all should go to therapy because clearly there's something there. I'm not sure why they have no issues with going to see the daughter, but they have issues with going to see him. And again, yes, they're all financially set except for the daughter. But my thing is, they said money's not an issue. He said he has no issues with paying. It's just that they said if he does not pay, they're not going to come and see him. It sounds like the parents have favorites.
Yeah. Or I guess they expect because he's a male, he should pay everything, and the daughter should wait around. I'm making this up. The daughter should wait around for a man to come and swoop in and take care of her.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is that the parents, they're divorced.
Yeah.
So they both feel that way. They're not going to ever come see him again.
Well, they were together for a reason.
Well, they got divorced for a reason too.
That's true.
He is not the a-hole to me. His parents, that's kind of messed up. I don't know how to feel about this.
He's definitely not the a-hole. I think he said he's willing to pay for them, but them demanding it, even though they can afford it themselves, said we're not coming to visit unless you pay for it. I think that's not cool.
They said the airfare. They don't have miles? I was just asking
Maybe
questions.
they want him to use his miles.
That's not right. What about the daughter? Where her man at? Or her partner? I can't assume that she has a husband. Her partner?
Her daddy and her mommy.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, that's all the time we have for today.
This is a great episode today.
Follow at AWB Pod on all platforms. Visit anxiouswhileblack.com for access to resources and more on the show. Listen to all our episodes on any platform that you listen to, or watch any of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.